It is not at all surprising that in the 20th century, new religions, cults, and sects began to appear en masse in the United States, the practices of some of which literally make your blood run cold. Get ready to be horrified. 5 of the most terrible sects in the United States are ahead. In 1997, the founder of the Heaven's Gate sect, Marshall Applewood, managed to persuade 39 of his followers to commit mass suicide, allegedly due to the imminent collision of the Earth with comet Hale-Bopp. But first things first. 20 years earlier, Marshall Applewhite declared himself an alien from another world, from the kingdom of heaven, and considered it his mission to help people return home. Moreover, Applewhite stated that he had already visited Earth 2,000 years ago in the form of Christ. And somehow it is not surprising that Applewhite found supporters who sincerely considered themselves representatives of extraterrestrial civilizations who were sent to Earth as teachers for all humanity. In the mid-90s, the sect began to live as a single community in an elite suburb of San Diego. Moreover, most of the sectarians were professional programmers who spent most of their time on the internet, looking for information about the appearance of UFOs and simultaneously earning money for the sect. In this order the sects were truly Spartan. The sectarians dressed in the same baggy clothes and wore gloves so as not to even accidentally touch and succumb to sinful desires. Every day they got up at 3 o'clock in the morning and went to look at the stars, and during the day they always hid from the sunlight. And then in 1997, comet Hale-Bopp approached Earth. Applewhite considered this a sign of the imminent end of the world, and promised his followers that they would leave their earthly bodies and travel on a spaceship. Each sectarian died on his own bed, next to which stood a neatly collected bag with things. They drank a lethal dose of sleeping pills, washed down with vodka, and then their brothers put plastic bags on the dying person's head, and covered their head and chest with a purple silk scarf. The police found 39 corpses of men and women, and as it turned out, all the men were castrated during their lifetime. Seventh-day Adventist Church. This is a special direction of Protestantism, which appeared in the middle of the 19th century in the Middle States. The founders of Adventism were an ordinary farmer, William Miller. While studying the Bible, he came to the conclusion that the second coming of Christ was soon coming, and off he went. The second coming never happened, but nevertheless the Seventh-day Adventist Church currently has about 20 million members. But like any large church, Adventists began to have their own special branches, which sometimes took very radical forms. And one of these groups was the religious group Branch of David. In 1993, the Branch Davidians were led by the popular and very charismatic leader David Koresh, who proclaimed himself King David, returning to the world before the coming of the Messiah. Thanks to his heartfelt sermons, Koresh increased the number of members of the group, but at the same time put the community under his strict control, frightening the adherents with the imminent onset of Armageddon, from which, naturally, only he could save. Gradually, the Branch of David turned into a small dictatorship, because at least the fact that David Koresh selected 19 women from the sect and made them his concubines, while the men got up every day at 5 in the morning and built the temple complex. In the end, Koresh really was able to feel like a little king. He built an almost impregnable fortress, well-trained bodyguards, and a personal harem. But in 1993, law enforcement agencies suspected the sect of child abuse, but when they tried to check, the sectarians met the police with machine gun fire. The police were prepared for such a turn of events and calculated that in case of resistance they could seize the palace within 45 seconds. But it was not there. Not only did the sectarians fight back and kill 4 agents in the process, they were able to hold out in their fortress for 51 days. 500 agents, helicopters, and even tanks were on duty at the palace every day, but after the final assault began, David Koresh ordered the commune to be set on fire. Rather, the ammunition exploded and it was no longer possible to put out the fire. All 90 cultists who remained in the palace, including women and children and David Koresh himself, died in the fire. This is how the story of the Branch of David ended. I think many of you have heard of the Amish. In fact, this is a unique community of people who, since the 17th century, have practically not changed their way of life. They have no electricity, they have no running water, they live according to primary religious rules, which are based on the Bible. They do everything they need with their own hands. The Amish dress in formal clothes, women are not allowed to wear any jewelry. But the main pride of any Amish man is his beard. Every Amish who gets married is required to grow a beard, although Amish mustaches are usually shaved off. Recently, one of the radical Amish groups decided to take revenge on their neighbors with whom they did not agree on religious views. The Amish gang broke into the homes of their fellow believers and forcibly shaved off the hair of women and the beards of men. The bandits were caught and, based on the totality of their crimes, they were sentenced to 15 years in prison. But many things that are considered normal among some insular Amish groups are nothing but horror these days. More recently, in 2016, a scandal broke out in the quiet, prosperous state of Pennsylvania. The Amish family, who were barely making ends meet, accepted help from their 50-year-old friend. And in gratitude for the help, they paid with their 14-year-old daughter. They simply gave the girl into sexual slavery. When the story came to light in 2016, it turned out that at that time the already 18-year-old slave had already given birth to 2 children for her master. Amish's family and their acquaintance were, of course, brought to justice. But I just can't believe that this incident that came to light by chance is unique. And what actually happens inside these closed communities is still a mystery. The Charles Manson family, one of the most terrible and violent cult communities in U.S. history. The future maniac Charles Manson was very unlucky with his adoptive father, who treated him more than cruelly. When Manson was sent to an orphanage, he was brutally beaten by guards and populated by high school students. And it is not at all surprising that by the age of 30, Manson already had 3 prison terms behind him. After another prison sentence, Manson goes to San Francisco, where he is gradually joined by followers who share his philosophy of life. Most of them were ex-convicts and hippies, whom Manson called children and called his sect nothing more than family. They settled in the famous Valley of Death. There the family had orgies, lived a carefree life, and Manson even tried to record his own album. One day he was invited to a meeting with producer Terry Mulcher, who did not appreciate Manson's dubious talent. And Manson did not forget this. And in August 1969, the family committed the most notorious murder in its history, which was called a bloody hell. They arrive at Melcher's former estate, which at that time belonged to director Roman Polanski, and brutally deal with everyone who was in the house. Roman Polanski's wife, actress Sharon Tate, who was 9 months pregnant, begged the killers to spare her for the sake of the child, but was stabbed. The next day, the family went on a new business and brutally murdered a married couple who owned a local supermarket. Manson was eventually caught, found guilty and sentenced to death, but the sentence was later commuted to life in prison. Terry Manson is still serving his sentence and has already been denied parole 18 times. In 1978, in the jungles of Guyana in South America, 918 U.S. citizens simultaneously drank a cyanide drink. Among them were 276 children. These were members of the Temple of Nations sect, and the reasons for this mass suicide are still not fully known. People's Temple founder Young Jones was born in 1931. Since childhood, he has been interested in religion. As a teenager, he actively preached on the street. And by the age of 24 he organized his own religious group. By the mid-60s, Jones moved to San Francisco, where a new radical sect, called the People's Temple, gradually began to form around the righteous man. Jones demanded that followers spend as much time as possible in church, adhere to strict daily routines, and refuse to communicate with relatives who did not share the views of the Temple of Nations. The harsh rules on the border with outright tyranny that were established within the sect became the reason for an information campaign against the temple, which began to be called a destructive cult. And Jones decided to leave the United States. In 74, several members of the sect rented a plot of 1,000 hectares in the jungle of Guyana, where they founded settlements, which were apparently named Jonestown in honor of the righteous man. After 3 years, Jones himself moved to the settlement, along with more than 900 of his followers. A year later, American Congressman Leo Ryan came to the commune. And in a private conversation, 16 cult members asked him to take them home. Jones was furious, but he couldn't publicly refuse Ryan. But when the congressman and other people were already boarding the plane, a group of armed men approached the plane. They killed the congressman and several other people. That same evening, Jones gathered the commune and announced that life in the People's Temple would not be the same, that the members would be persecuted by the American authorities, and that the best way out of the situation was a revolutionary act of suicide. The children were poisoned first. The killer drink was injected into the children's mouths using syringes. Many adults then voluntarily accepted the poison without hesitation, but those who refused were forced to drink. In any case, this is the official version. Many analysts believe that most of the cult members were poisoned, but the exact reasons for the tragedy of the People's Temple sect have not yet been clarified. If you liked the video, don't forget to like it.